Hey, it's the Right Rican, and I'm going to talk about Cuba again today because I've been reading some stuff, and it's really crazy that you have over there in Cuba, you have a communist regime that, provides, uh, you know, equal salary, applies equal health care and all this stuff. Oh, well, let me use the left's word, equitable health care and equitable salary, because, they like to change words, but let's be realistic. It's the same thing. They just want to, they just like to change the language. But when I say they gaslight us, I've made videos saying that, they use gaslighting as a way to make it seem like you're the crazy one. When you see what they're fighting for, freedom in Cuba, it's not about, they're making it seem it's about. Well, here's a stupid meme. I just want to share this because it drove me mad. Where it goes here, Republicans are supporting Cubans who are fighting communism for a living wage, healthcare, and basic human rights, while at the same time telling Americans a living wage, healthcare, and human rights are communism. And before I go into the article I want to talk about, it's just gaslighting, manipulation. These people are fighting for freedom. They're acting like we don't have human rights here in this country. It's like just because Black Lives Matter wants to, um, every time there's a uh, uh, black person shot by a white cop, they want to make it every time it happens, and it happens. They want to make it seem like that's racism, that's institutional racism, because that's all they have. That's their last card is the race riot, because that's what these people in Cuba understand. That's why the Cuban exiles in Florida wrote Republican. That's why the Venezuelans that are coming to this country are voting Republican. They don't want none of these policies here. They don't want they don't want government to be their daddy. They don't want government to be their parent. The government's not there to take care of us. The government's there to protect our rights. And that's the whole thing. They on the left, they're they want to make everything a right. So like that, they could say that's what the government's there to protect your rights. Because that's what the government, I mean, they use the fact that the government's there to protect your rights, but then they turn everything into a right. And everything's not a right. Healthcare is not a right because that means you got to force someone else to take care of you. That's the whole thing. Saying healthcare is a right, is a human right. Well, guess what? That doctor, now you're forcing him to take, let's say, taking care of everybody instead of like a small group of people that come to see him. And most doctors, you go to an emergency room. I had an emergency surgery with no insurance. You know, they'll send you bills and all that stuff, but at the same time, you let it wait, and they'll take less money. But that's the game. You got to know how to play the system. But this is what goes on. They tell you right. Everything's a right. Everything's a right. They don't know what a right is. You know, and the government's there to protect us, to protect our rights, and not to force other people to give us stuff, because that's what goes on. This whole rich redistribution of wealth is just theft by legal means. That's what it boils down to. But anyway, let me keep going. Let me go with this article because let's go here. Like I went talk. Let's go from this nonsense. When they're talking about this is what Republicans are supporting. Well, this is what Democrats aren't supporting. The Cuban people will be free. Congressman introduces resolution to support Cuban protest. Only Republicans sign on. Here's the key tenets of the resolution. Okay, calls for the release of all political prisoners and for the end of acts of repression, arbitrary imprisonments, torture, and the other human right abuses against the Cuban people, honors the courageous Cuban people for daring to stand up to the Cuban regime and demanding respects for fundamental freedoms such as the freedom of expression and assembly, recognizes the brave pro-democracy and human rights activists, including independent journalists, artists, labor leaders, and religious leaders who have been persecuted throughout decades of communist tyranny, urges other democracies, regional and multilateral organizations to affirm that violence against the unarmed people of Cuba will not be tolerated and that human rights abuses will be held accountable for their crimes. Express solidarity with the long-suffering Cuban people and their demands for a genuine democratic transition, and calls on the international community to stand with those struggling for freedom in Cuba by condemning repression and expressing unevocable support for their unequivocal support for their rights to self-government, human rights, and basic liberties. And look, this is one of the problems that I've mentioned this in a video before. You cannot the problem with what Black Lives Matter, and the woke, the problem that they don't see is you weaken our position globally when you make it seem that we're as bad as Cuba, or we're like, like to the squad member, we'll forget if it's Talib or no, it might have been Omar, where they said that they were comparing us to the Taliban and ISIS. It's like, really? You're comparing like the U.S. government and U.S. military to the Taliban and ISIS? They threw in Israel there. I mean, the anti-Semitism with that squad is strong in them. But that's the problem here. Where you go here, where was it here? No, right here under um, and human right abuses. There's no human right abuses going on in this country. Maybe, I'm not saying, I shouldn't say that in the absolute terms, but yeah, we have human rights abuses. I mean, hey, you have an unpopular ex-president that they hate him so much that they're just going through all his records to try to find a crime, not knowing what the crime is, just looking for a crime. That's political persecution. Usually the crime is supposed to be committed and then you find evidence of who committed the crime, not that you're looking for a crime that someone's committed, even though just because you hate them. So anyways, but this is what goes on. I mean, this is what passes for Democrats, and this is what passes for them too. The the talking out both sides of their mouth. They're saying that, oh, these people are supporting, they're wanting to get all these rights. But meanwhile, when there's a resolution, not even like it's binding, it's not like a binding law, it's just a resolution. Not one Democrat could sign it as of the filming of the video. Not one Democrat. But they say, that's what kills me when they're talking about like with the voting rights. They make it seem like they're fighting for voting rights. That's that the Republicans call for stricter voting, for security in voting, and they're calling that voter suppression. Well, here's the thing: we had a pandemic last year during an election season, so we allowed things that we don't normally allow in a regular election because there could be a lot of irregularities, a lot of shenanigans could go on with some of these things they allowed last year. Well, what's going on? Republicans are trying to scale back some of those things, allow for other things, and it's never enough with the Democrats. There's, it's, I mean, it kills me that they say, like you had Kamala Harris talking about, oh, well, now, it's not racist to have a photo ID. It's about the poor white people who don't know, country people who don't know how to, don't have access to photocopies. Are you kidding me? It's like, um, I have a printer right here, right next to me. I live in a rural area. All I need to do is I can make a photocopy of my ID with my printer. I could take a picture, print it out. But this is what they do. They when they see that the whole voter ID issue is really unpopular. So now they're jumping, and the whole thing of saying it's racist is really dumb and unpopular. So now they're trying to make it, oh no, it's about poor people. Look, listen, poor people need IDs. Poor people have IDs also. Okay. I got relatives on welfare, they have IDs. So don't tell me that you can't get an ID. And same thing with the country folks. They may have to drive further to get an ID, but everybody needs one in our modern society. So to say you don't need it for to vote is ridiculous. If I got I just bought a car, needed to show an ID. If um, I just bought some beer, had to show an ID. Shoot, if I want to go buy some cough syrup or spray can, I have to show an ID. Cough syrup and a spray can, I have to show ID. But to vote, I don't have to show an ID. It's ridiculous. I mean, this whole thing of, and I love the way the post millennial uses the left's talking points against them. Biden repeats big lie talking points. Um, excuse me. Alleges that the 21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's it's the it's the big lie. It's really the big lie. It's Democrats know. This is the irony. The Democrats say that the Republicans rely on low information voters. But meanwhile, what did they rely on in the last election cycle? They relied on lazy, low information voters. Because if they would have looked beyond the hate for Trump, because I can tell you right now, I got friends who they're like, they might have not voted for Biden. They might have not voted at all just because they hated Trump so much. They would have not voted at all because they hate what's going on right now. The gas prices, the inflation, it's real. I mean, the gas prices are ridiculously high compared to where they were under Trump. We were energy independent, and not anymore. We're going to have to rely on foreign oil again. What's that going to lead to? Conflict. It's going to happen. That's the game. So, but this is what they're doing. I mean, President Biden calls Republican election integrity laws 21st century Jim Crow and vows to challenge it rigorously. Damn it, thirsty. Uh, yeah, this is just. I mean, it's just lie after lie after lie. Look, wanting people to ballot harvest, saying that's okay, curbside voting. They want to do ballot harvesting. Let's check this out. They want to do ballot harvesting. They want to do curbside balloting. They want to do universal mail-in ballots. Okay, without having to prove you're that person. That's ridiculous. So you're going to send out. Let's say you live in. New York City. 8 million people. So you're going to universally send out 8 million ballots, and people get. Let's say, what if you go and by mistake the postal worker puts 2 or 3 in your um, in your mailbox. Well, now you could have you could if you want, if you were a shady person, you could vote 2 extra times now, because that means they put wrong people's ballots. But if you don't have to put an ID, I mean, at the very least, you should have to put your state ID has a an ID number. You should be able to at least have to put that number. But how do you know people aren't? If you send out these universal, how do you know people aren't voting more than once? How do you know if people aren't giving their ballots away to other people? Or ballot harvesting, that won't matter because you'll have you have a pundit go around collecting ballots. You don't know if they're for sure going to send. Maybe they'll look and be like, "Oh, wait a minute, this person said he voted Democrat, but I see here uh, for Senate he voted Republican. He didn't vote. He only voted President Democrat, and everything else is Republican. Nope, we're going to throw that out. That's ballot harvesting, people. But like I said, all of that could be prevented with just a simple. Well, it won't be prevented, but an ID makes it harder to have these type of irregularities. But that's not what That's the number one thing they fight is the voter ID. Texas has early voting. You could request a ballot. The only thing is they don't want to do the ballot drop boxes. They want you to have to mail it or take it to the voting office. I don't think there's a problem with that. I don't want lazy voters. I want informed, educated voters. I don't want someone to go. Um, I have a relative that I told them about. I met a candidate for governor here in Pennsylvania, and she goes, "Oh, is it the cute guy with the goatee?" And I'm like, "No." And I'm like, "So you're gonna vote for someone just because of the way they look? Just just as dumb as voting for someone because they're a woman is just as dumb as voting for someone because they're black, because they're Latino. It doesn't. That's not why you should vote for someone. It's like as happy as I was to have a Puerto Rican be in the Supreme Court. I don't like the fact, as much as I'm proud of that, I'm unproud of the fact that she is one of the more liberal justices in the Supreme Court. I don't like her policies. So, I mean, what are we gonna, I mean, I don't. This just gets me angry. That's why I come on here, because sometimes But let's go back to Cuba here. Yeah, I just wanted, really just want to show some of these videos. I mean, it's amazing what's going on there. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, here, like I showed this the other day with the this is the one with the American flag. I mean, it's. I mean, I wish I could pull up the video of like Hong Kong when they were doing the Hong Kong protest. It was the same thing. It was just as much as the left and leftists in this country and the woke, as much as they hate this country, and I will say it, they hate this country. The rest of the world still sees us as a beacon of freedom. That's why you see the Cuban protesters with American flags, Hong Kong protesters with American flags. And I'll take 1,000 of those people over these American hating wokeists. I mean, like, exchange them. You guys want socialism and communism? Do me a favor. Why don't you switch with those Hong Kong protesters and with the Cuban protesters and go live in your socialist Marxist paradise? Go see how much change you can make in those countries. Yes, that's I'm gonna leave it there because that's the part that just gets me frustrated. So tomorrow I'm gonna have an interview. I did an interview with a interesting young woman, very strong woman. And it's going to be it was a fun interview. Had a great time chatting with her, and I look forward to more conversations with her because I think we're gonna, we you'll see tomorrow. You'll see the good conversation we had. It was a great time recording it, and I look forward to releasing it tomorrow. So, anyways, I'm the Right Rican. You can follow me on YouTube and Rumble, and also if you want, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Gab, Parler, Telegram, all of those. So have a good one.